I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this dude needs a haircut, and you're absolutely right. I'm going to get one. I'm leaving to TwitchCon pretty soon, and I do plan on getting my haircut before then. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of wild. I'm so sorry, but the reason why I haven't been able to get one is because I've been super fucking busy playing this expansion like update that just dropped for Throne and Liberty. For those of you who don't know, Talandre is a new region that just dropped in Throne and Liberty. We are calling the most recent update the Talandre update, and this is an expansion like update. We call it this because there's just been a royal fuck ton of content that just dropped with this expansion, which includes a brand new zone that almost doubles the size of the world, new dungeons, more vertical progression, more gear, open world dungeons, changes to the vertical progression system in itself, combat revamp, bug fixes, as well as additional bugs. But anyways, in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys my early review because this has been out for about a week, 2 weeks, if you include the pre-patch. And I do plan on making an in-depth updated is it worth playing game review video for Throne and Liberty, because this game has really transformed, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because the game has only been out for 9 months. I don't think I've ever played an MMORPG that has been out for 9 months and has transformed this much, for the better or worse, really. But before we dive into that, quick word from today's sponsor. As an MMO gamer, I am very much often at the mercy of region locks. There's nothing worse than a brand new MMORPG that comes out and I don't have access to it because of a region lock. In fact, I actually didn't even have access to play the very first MMORPG that I essentially created my channel around. I needed a VPN. Whether it's access to a game that's blocked for you or even accessing websites that are blocked in your region, check out Surfshark VPN. Being someone who travels frequently, I've used Surfshark to access a number of games that I didn't have access to, as well as a number of websites that were blocked in whatever country that I was in. And if you're wondering what kind of websites, obviously anime websites, okay, along with others, but anime websites, because I mean, come on, we don't get English subtitles everywhere around the world, okay? So anyways, you'll be able to try out Surfshark on any device, on however many devices you want at any time. And on top of that, you also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so why not? If you want to give it a go, be sure to use my code CanonXO or go to surfshark.com/CanonXO for an additional 4 months free. Links can be found in the description. All right, so with that ad out of the way, I want to let you guys know once again that this is an early review video. I will have a more in-depth, is it worth playing full review video of the updated version of the game closer to launch. Now, I am on a whale. If you guys are wondering where I'm at, I'm on a flying whale. I felt like this would be the best spot to actually shoot this, but sorry, we're getting off topic here. We are going to first start with the combat. Okay, so the combat was a major talking point in Throne and Liberty, especially for those of you who played in the beta. Let's just call it what it is. It starts out relatively slow, a little bit clunky, and then it starts picking up at the end game to the point where once your build comes together, because in Throne and Liberty, the nature of this game, you are your own build, which I personally kind of like that aspect of the game. The combat naturally just doesn't really pick up until you have an actual build together, right? So I get the counter argument is, hey, that's bad, because if it's boring early, you're going to lose me. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to argue with you on that, because there are plenty of people that will be lost early. However, the new combat that was introduced, they introduced the skill specialization. And if you've ever played Lost Ark, a good comparison to this would be like, imagine using the abilities in Lost Ark, and then all of a sudden you have access to the tripods. As most of you guys know who've played Lost Ark, they completely change a lot of the abilities. So you've got your regular skills here, which were touched up on. Some of these abilities did change. So for example, precision dash, this was just a single one little mid-range dash, and now it's a targetable skill that can move your character without a target, and then that turns into a 2-part skill. I don't have a target here. From there, I can charge into my opponent or my target from there as well. So that's just an example of how some of these skills changed at a base, and then on top of that you have skill specialization. And I think overall the skill specializations here have really improved the combat. Not only is the combat, excuse me, more dynamic, there's more AoE, it's smoother, it's faster. More importantly, there's more build options, which keeps things relatively fun for those of you who've been playing for a while. There is no perfect build. Overall, I'm going to give the combat a B+. But to add to this little combat section here, I also want to say a big critical point during the beta test was the panning, the camera. And as you can see, the panning of my camera is very crisp, responsive, sharp. There is no smoothness, and they actually added an option to remove the delay camera rotation, so you don't get that little smoothness. I know this killed Throne Liberty for a lot of people. That is gone. Another thing that they changed or updated was the actual base movement. Some of you guys might not be able to notice. I didn't really hate the inertia that the player movement that the player models had to begin with when you would move, but they made it more responsive, faster. They made it faster, so as you can see, there's less delay or inertia that's going on when it comes to the movement, so a lot of you guys may enjoy that as well. So overall, like I said, I'm going to give the combat update a B+. The only reason why I'm not giving it an A is because there have been some bugs that have been also introduced to this patch. For example, there are certain tripods, skill specializations, like for example, the Shadow Strike, the range, that just flat out doesn't work. And I'm going to pull up a clip right now for you guys to see, but here's another example of a bug that was introduced in this skill expression update or skill specialization update. And this one in particular really bothers me. You're going to notice as I use a cast ability, it's easy for me to cancel out of the cast by simply pressing a directional key. I'm using the A button here. The moment I tap it, it cancels my cast. My character kind of, moves to the left, for as long as I hold the button. That's how it should work. However, when I use that same cast while I'm auto attacking, you're going to see me do the same cancel input, but instead of canceling immediately, my character is going to continue to cast and then eventually stop casting and then slide to the left a mile. For whatever reason, this bug is in the game. Now, I would say this bug in particular is one of the worst. This is probably the worst of them. Some of the other ones are a little bit more in line with, hey, this ability isn't working. Actually, even the Shadow Strike ability that's not working, that's one of the very few. There aren't that many that are just flat out not working, but there are a few things that feel a little bit clunky. So it went from having a decent amount of clunkiness to barely having any, but the fact that there are still some, that leads me to give this overall combat update a B+. If they can fix those little clunkiness issues, then this is definitely an overall A. If you've played this from the beta, your experience is just going to be hands down better with this combat update. All right, as far as the new region goes, guys, the Talandre region, which you can see right here, this is Laslan, this is Stoneguard, and this whole area up here is the Talandre region. This is the new region that's been dropped. As you can see, the world has almost doubled in size. This is a really big region. I'm going to give them an overall B grade for the expansion of the actual world. And the reason why is, number one, I like what they've actually done with the zones when it comes to the theme of the zones. The buildings look fantastic. The world looks gorgeous. You've got one area that's kind of like a brood-like vampire-esque mansion area. And then you've got another area that's a little bit more dwarven / golem-esque area, and then you got another area that's kind of like a swamp marshy area, and then you got like the nature area. Overall, I feel like they've done a pretty good job, not only with the look of the zone, but also with the diverse mobs. You don't really see just a copy-pasted mob everywhere in the world. All the zones have pretty unique mobs that look pretty decent as well. I'm not going to go into too much detail in this one, but I'm not going to give them an A grade, which I know a lot of you guys watching this video might, when it comes to just the aesthetics of the zone. The reason why I don't give it an A is because there are some serious performance issues with this area. NCSoft has done a pretty good job so far when it comes to the performance of their game. For example, when you teleport from one zone to another, it feels very seamless, assuming you're on a good computer. And the only time you really drop frames is when you're doing a big siege war, or if you're doing like a world boss. Other than that, the performance for this game has been fantastic, and you definitely experience a little bit of a step back from that with this expansion. Now, obviously, there is a little bit of that to be expected, especially when the world has almost doubled in size. But if we are going to be critical of this game, I think they can do a better job fixing up some of these bugs and the performance issues that have come along with this region. I think we got to continue pushing them for that. They have been actually improving in that regard, but I would not say quite there yet. For that reason, I'm giving the new region an overall B grade. Next, we've got the dungeons. With this big update, we got new dungeons. In Throne Liberty, you've got a leveling dungeon, you've got 1-star dungeons, 2-star dungeons, and now we have the 3-star dungeons. The Forest of Grudge dungeon is the first one that we got, and we are getting Mansion in a couple of days, and then every 2 weeks we are going to unlock a new dungeon. Forest of Grudge, in my opinion, is probably the best dungeon that they've done so far. I'm not talking about when it comes to the difficulty of the dungeon or anything like that. I just mean the fun factor. This dungeon is not too difficult. It is not too easy. I think it's a very fine balance between the two, and overall it's just fun. I really think the dungeons to begin with were pretty good in Throne Liberty. Nothing groundbreaking. You're not going to get a Lost Ark experience, but from the beginning, the original 1-star dungeons I always thought were pretty decent. The 2-star dungeons I thought got better, and now the 3-star dungeons, they're even better than these. So I really like the trajectory that they're on when it comes to these PvE dungeons, and I'm very much looking forward to the 12-man raids that are expected to drop in January. Like I said, overall, I'm going to give them a B+ for the dungeons. Next, we've got the challenge dungeons here, and the challenge dungeons was also a new form of PvE content that they added to the game. These are your Mythic Plus like dungeons. If you've played PoE, they're kind of like maps. Diablo 4, they're kind of like nightmare dungeons, Mythic Plus dungeons really in World of Warcraft. What are these? Well, these are the regular dungeons that are in the game, only they have difficulty modifiers that increase as you go up tiers, and you can take this all the way up. There is also a competitive aspect to it. There's a ranking here, so if you are interested in playing Throne Liberty and you don't want a PvP at all, but you still want something to work for and to compete against, now you've got challenge dungeons, and these dungeons are actually pretty fun. Like I said, I've always been a fan of the dungeons in Throne Liberty, and I love seeing them add this type of content. The modifiers make some of these fights very difficult, to the point where I know a lot of you dudes watching this video, your asses aren't going to be able to do some of these higher tiers. I assure you, and this is coming from a Lost Ark player. Now, is it going to be Theamine Gate 4 levels of difficulty? Of course not. I mean, what are we talking about here? Okay, this is Throne Liberty. But I do like this, and also this isn't a waste of time because there's a new form of vertical progression called runes, and runes, which we're not going to talk too much about the vertical progression systems in this video, but this is a big part of your endgame loop, and you doing these challenge dungeons will allow you to grind out your rune levels. And I should also say, this is the only form of content that also gives you vertical progression that is not capped. Everything else in this game is capped. Whether it's you can do 2 dungeons a day or kill a certain amount of mobs per day, for the most part, everything is capped except for these Mythic Plus dungeons. Overall, I give the challenge dungeons in Throne Liberty, I will give it a B grade. Next, we've got the open world dungeons, and this might take some people by surprise, but I'm going to give the open world dungeon experience an A. And the reason why is, well, there's a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I do kind of like the design of this new open world dungeon, but more so it's getting an A grade because of the new function of it, what it is. For those of you who may have played Throne Liberty in the past, it was very difficult to farm loot in this game. If you go out there and grind, you might get 1 or 2 purple gear pieces, and if you did, you were insanely lucky. They have now changed it, so it's a little bit more BDO-esque. You go out there, every mob you kill is going to give you a lot of loot that you can actually use, as well as gear pieces ranging from tier 1s all the way to tier 2s. And these drops are pretty frequent. You will get multiple pieces of gear as you go out there and farm these open world dungeons. Not only that, the dungeon experience in itself is better because the combat is better. The skill specialization is better. Every class can essentially go out there. They have more AoE. It's more dynamic. It's faster pace. You're dealing more damage. So just by nature of the combat being upgraded and changed, the experience in these open world dungeons are also better. One of the biggest things about the open world dungeon that gives it a higher grade for me in my book is the fact that they've done loot relatively well. This has been an issue with Throne in the past, as well as a lot of other games. You'd run into these issues where healers, for example, would get less loot than the damage dealers, and they've changed it so the loot is distributed in the party pretty equally, pretty balanced, and you get your own loot. So if you and I go out there and I'm on a DPS and you're on a healer, we are going to get relatively similar loot. So this incentivizes people to go out there as a healer. This incentivizes people to go out there as a tank. And overall, it's just a better experience because you can do this content both solo or in a group. And I think that's really important because you're not forcing group content, but you're also offering soloable content. I will say that it's probably a little bit more fun, and you will save a little bit more time doing this in a group, which is totally fine, but there's no issues doing this solo. There will be some issues doing this solo if you are a glass cannon that's squishy and under geared. Obviously, this content does require a little bit of gear, but overall, I'm giving this open world dungeon experience an A. World bosses are next, and honestly, guys, this is kind of an easy one. This is going to be pretty short. I'm going to give the new world bosses a C grade. Not because I don't like new world bosses. I absolutely love the fact that they are constantly adding in new world bosses that have their own unique loot that you definitely want to go and do. I don't hate doing this. I do enjoy doing this, but I'm giving it a C grade because it just doesn't really stand out to me as something that I can give as a good grade, mainly because it's just pretty generic content. They're just adding quantity, really. I didn't really see a huge bump when it comes to the quality of these. Yeah, I think the bosses look pretty cool. The zones look great that they're in, but when it comes to like the actual mechs, I think they've actually digressed a little bit when it comes to these actual world boss fights. Now, we haven't obviously seen all of the world bosses that are coming in with this new area. We've seen a couple, but overall, I think it would just be disingenuous of me to give this an actual high grade. There's just in no world do I think anyone can really give this a higher grade compared to the previous fights. I mean, Azrael, Menezerok, these fights were absolutely more challenging when it comes to actual mechs, but to be fair, I think that's okay. This is a world boss. All these bosses are kind of burning and dying relatively quickly anyway. I don't know how many of you guys enjoy doing world bosses for the purpose of challenging content, but if I am going to be giving it a grade, I'm going to give this one a C. Now, with the Talandre update, we got a lot of gear. This is probably one of my favorite parts of Throne Liberty, and it is a huge appeal for me, and that is the gearing and itemization. In Throne Liberty, you are your build. If you and I are both playing Greatsword Dagger, we could be completely different Greatsword Daggers. Your build, what you want to be strong against, what you want to be weak against, that is up to you, and there is no perfect build. And I absolutely love the fact that as you progress your character, as you build your character, you feel what that build becomes, and it just feels better. This is not like a Lost Ark or BDO game experience where if you play Striker, for example, you and I are going to be essentially playing it the same way. There's an ideal rotation. There's an ideal gear set that you want to go for. It's not like that. In Throne Liberty, you have a lot of options, and the fact that they just added 150 to 200 new items, not quite 200, but I think it's somewhere in that range, 150 to 200 new items just with this update was really, really exciting for me. And I love the trajectory that they're on because they are constantly adding more items that just make things interesting. A big part of the end game incentive for me personally is to put together more builds. Look forward to these updates that are going to introduce new weapons, new gear types that's going to change up the experience for a certain weapon, and this patch is no different. Overall, I'm going to give this a B, but this part in particular is probably the most exciting part about everything in regards to Throne Liberty for me personally. Now, the last thing on this list is the life skilling. They added life skilling to this game. You've got Amatoi. You got like this passive Amatoi housing thing, expedition thing. It's pretty simple. You just choose your Amatois and send them out on an expedition. After an hour to 8 hours, they come back with some mats. You've got this cooking here. The cooking is something that was introduced to the game and can be pretty significant. I would recommend everyone to actually do this just because it's actually worth doing. They also added fishing to the game, which is also a nice little side content that you can do while you chill. I think they've done a relatively good job with the life skilling. This is not content that's similar to BDO's life skilling where you can just do life skilling. This is absolutely side content content in the game so far. Overall, I think they've done a pretty decent job. I'm going to give them a little bit of leniency here just because this is brand new content that was never in the game. And for that reason, I'm going to give the Lifeskilling a B. I'm not going to give it an A because A to me means it's a fully fledged out system. Realistically, if this was a game that's been out for years, I'm giving this a C, but because it's a brand new addition to the game and they're probably trying to introduce it in pieces, I'm going to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt here and give them a B grade because out the gate, it's not too bad. Overall, guys, I'm very happy with this expansion. I think the game is absolutely in a better state. There are some things, important discussion points that I would like to have in due time. For example, where the meta is heading, as well as the new endgame loop. I don't want to really touch on those subjects in this video just because that would take a much longer time, and each one of those subjects is probably its own video. But I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want my overall thoughts on everything, I would give this expansion from a content perspective, I would definitely give this an A, right? But when it comes to everything involved, if we're also going to kind of consider the bugs and stuff, I don't think I can give this an A. I would give this a B. Really, what's kind of killing this, I don't want to say killing this, I shouldn't say killing this, I should say really what's kind of bringing this expansion or update down from being just holy shit, this is the best update ever, it really just are those bugs. Hopefully they can fix some of these bugs relatively quickly. They have been already fixing some of these, so we'll just have to see in due time. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next video.